What is going on, YouTube? So wanted to come back today. I did, what was it, 2 days ago, John Morant, yesterday, 2 days ago, something like that. I jumped on the scouting report for John Morant, Murray State point guard. I said I was going to try to do a few here before the NBA draft to see how they really catch on. I do know we're like less than a month out from the draft, so did probably need to get these in a little bit earlier, but still kind of want to get my take on the top players here at least. So today I did want to touch on Cam Reddish. He's an interesting prospect, man. There's a ton of stuff to dive into. I think the main difference here is buying into the difference between his combine, his high school film, AAU, all that sort of stuff compared to what he did at Duke. That's where all the breakdowns are going to come from. That's where all the discrepancies are going to lie. Now, to recap the format that I want to do, I want to go through his strengths and weaknesses on offense, defense, and the numbers to back those each way. And then I want to jump into how I feel like his game will translate to the next level, what I feel like his projections would be, best landing spots. This type of guy is easier than John Morant, who's pretty much a lock to go to the Grizzlies. But then I'm going to say, I believe I did 1 to 4 on what his impact would be at the next level. 4 being right away, star level talent, 1 being just not a good fit at all. And Reddish should be an interesting one to see where I don't know where I'm going to put him at this point. Kind of get through the video to see. So anyway, go ahead and jump in here. So again, Cam Reddish, very unusual prospect. AAU film looks like the next coming of like a Paul George or maybe not a Kevin Durant, but Paul George, maybe. Kevin Durant not as good at shooting from range. I'm trying to jump to a few other forwards in the league that can really handle the ball. Kawhi Leonard-esque, who could probably play at the 4 if need be. But one of those guys who's just a wing that just really athletic, very fluid, has a lot of control with his movements. And again, AAU and high school film looks great. I mean, he's dunking on everyone, getting to the rim in the blink of an eye, can distribute the ball all over the place on offense, and then has the length to defend pretty much anyone 1 to 4 on defense. And I'll jump into that in a little bit. But again, that's where the discrepancies are going to lie there. So now let's jump into his offensive game from Duke. Where he needs to improve, all that fun stuff. Now, I will say this up front. Looking through his college numbers, there's just not much positives that you can take away here. Not trying to hit on the guy, but that's just like the fact of the matter. I mean, if you look at his stat lines from Duke, it's just not very good. Even with Zion out of the lineup, he has some games where he turned the ball over just entirely too much. The advanced stats don't like him a whole lot. And there's not much positives to take away. I mean, the flat-out points per game even weren't that great. So a few strengths that we can dive into on offense. Again, the length is there. The ball handling ability can be there, was there at times. Free throw percentage was actually okay. He shot 77% from the line. Offensive rating, 98, not great. Per 100 possessions, I guess. Rebounds weren't bad. But again, that was 7 rebounds. It's really hard to say. Offensive box plus minus 2. He had 0.8 offensive win shares. His numbers were actually better on the defensive end of the floor in that regard. But yeah, so free throw shooting was pretty good. He did have stretches where he shot the ball well from 3. But that his discrepancy between 3-point and overall field goal percentage weren't that bad. I think he was like a 34% shooter from 3, like 35 or 36% shooter from the field. Given his length and the way he's even showed out in workouts since the end of the NCAA tournament, or since at least Duke was knocked out, if he improves his shooting, I think it's just a natural flow that he'll be able to get his 3-point shooting percentage up in the NBA. In the length, the athleticism, the fluidity, shooting motion, and just previous track record, there are instances, like I said, especially in AAU ball, where he looked really good. But anyway, it just comes to the whole being like overshadowed by Zion and RJ Barrett thing that people keep jumping back to here, which is understandable. I mean, they were in terms of this draft class, 2 of the 3 best players, probably going to be the 2 of the 3 first players off the board. So he's like 6'8", 7'1", 7'2" wingspan about. He's not so he's very fluid. He's a good athlete. I would say one thing to note, though, he doesn't leap off the page at you. John Morant just explodes off the screen once he gets to the rim. Like, he's just an insane athlete that can live above the rim. Cam Reddish has the vertical leaping ability to do that, but it's not the same quickness and explosiveness that you would get. He has a decent first step. He showed in the past that he can handle the ball well enough to get to the rim, uses length, strength, and just overall quickness to be able to get to the rack. Now, 3-point shooting, again, I think it can be there mid-range. I don't think it's going to be huge for him, but we'll see. Have to keep an eye on that. I do think the free throws, if he can get to the line a lot in the NBA, I think that's going to be huge for him, because I think he can improve in all areas of his shooting. The one that he doesn't really need to improve on too much, though, is free throws. And with how fluid he is, at least from what he showed in the past, and he just really did not show that at Duke either. I mean, that should be there. Now, moving on to like some of the weaknesses here. Again, he turned the ball over a lot. I think if he's going to be one of those wings that can play in multiple positions on the floor, like he does have the potential to do, he's going to have to turn the ball over less. I mean, his turnover percentage was like 6 percentage points higher than his assist percentage. He averaged 1.9 assists per game, 2.7 turnovers. That in and of itself is obviously an issue. He didn't hit the offensive boards too hard, 0.6 offensive rebounds per game. Obviously, you'd like to see that be a little bit higher with how with his supporting cast and just how much space was there available for him. I think that I just think that he went through stretches where he just almost couldn't do anything right. But again, I think that's a known fact. The shooting percentages in college were not great. His points per game were not great. Points per game was going to be drowned out, though. Assist numbers are way too low. I think he could have gotten to the free throw line a little bit more, 3.2 free throw attempts per game. But yeah, anyway, in terms of more specific stuff, I do think that his mid-range game isn't very good. He does try to take a good amount of fadeaway shots, and it's look kind of awkward sometimes. But again, 2-point game, I don't think it's going to be huge for him in the NBA. So I don't think that's going to be a huge part of what he brings to the table. But I think he's just got to get better on his 2-point shooting. He's not very aggressive when he gets inside the arc. Again, he takes some very awkward jumps on his pull-ups from 2-point range, especially from deep. But again, that's just not really the way the game's changed nowadays. Anyway, moving over to his defensive skill set, and this is where it starts to get a little bit more positive for him. His defensive rating wasn't as good as his offensive rating, but he did have more, or his defensive box plus minus and defensive win shares were much better than offensive. Just from a broad perspective, I think that's a better way to look. 2.9 steal percentage, not bad. He did average like 1.6 steals per game. He actually had from what I know, he had pretty good block numbers per 40 minutes? 0.8. 2% or 2% block percentage. So given his length, though, again, said about a 7'1", 7'2" wingspan, there's the potential that he could get a few more blocks at the next level, depending on how his defensive ability develops. Now, I do think that great length, quick hands. I mean, this is a guy that can force a ton of turnovers and wreak a bunch of havoc. Again, the physical tools to defend really anywhere from the 1 to the 4. So that's going to be a positive look for him there. And I just think that a lot of his raw physical tools are going to benefit him. Again, decent leaping ability, vertical or lateral quickness, at least not really a Duke, but AAU ball, high school ball, that sort of stuff. He did show a good amount of lateral quickness there, so I think that's something that can translate to the next level as well. We're talking about a guy that out of high school was getting like all NBA or all NBA defensive team type excitement, and I just don't think that's the case right now. But who knows? Again, he's still, even in a few of his draft workouts, he's showing kind of the same thing that he did in college, or before he ended up at Duke. So we'll see here. Now, there's not really any more defensive numbers to dive deep into. I just think that his defensive game will translate more automatic to the NBA than his offense. I do think he's got a rather high floor on the defensive end of the floor, which for a guy that we're talking about that most people probably wouldn't consider has a high floor in general, that's not a bad thing to end up with there. Now, how do I think his game will translate to the next level? And this is really hard to say for Cam Reddish because he's one of the most uncertain prospects in this draft class in terms of his ceiling. Where does his ceiling fall? From what he showed at Duke, it just looks like his ceiling is not going to be that high. If we're just judging off his Duke film here and that's it, we're talking about a guy that probably should fall in like late first round. He's got good physical tools. He could be a solid defender, yes. And he did get to play alongside good players and had a few good games. But like outside of that, there's not many positives to take away. At best, I think at best in the first like 2 or 3 years in the NBA, we'd be looking around like a 12 to 14 points per game. I just don't think he's going to get a whole lot of usage to start out in his NBA career. I just don't think that would be a good fit either for him to get a whole lot of usage right away. Now, looking at that differently, some NBA teams might feel that if he is given a bigger spotlight and he's not overshadowed as much like he was at Duke, that could also benefit him. And I do see that perspective, but I just don't think it's smart to give him usage right away. I think he needs some work to iron out some of the kinks in his game a little bit that he showed at Duke. Now, again, 12 to 14 points per game, I think is the best case scenario. I do think the rebounding and assist numbers can go up, though, and the turnovers can drop. I think that's where you can see a really big improvement in his game. I do think he could be, a best case scenario, like a 12 to 14 points per game, around 6 or 7 rebounds, and around 4 to 5 assists. And again, that's his first 2 or 3 years. I think he's still got a long way to go. He's, of course, still very young. I don't even know if he's turned 20 yet. I have to check on that just to be sure, though. But anyway, yeah, I think that realistically, we're looking at a player in his first few years in the league that's probably going to be around 8 to 10 points per game. Hopefully gets up to around that 4 to 5 rebound mark because I do think he has the length to get there and the quickness. And then assists, hopefully at least like 3 per game while minimizing the turnovers there. Get the turnover percentage down like at least below 12% at the next level. So we'll see how that pans out for him, though. Field goal percentage numbers, I think, are going to be a big one for him. Obviously, you still want him to be hitting around at least 75 to 80% from the line, getting to the line. If he's getting more minutes per game, still hopefully around 3 to 5 times per game, and just have those numbers go up from there. 3-point percentage, I do think he's got the ability to set a floor of like a 35% and then maybe get up around 36 or 37. And then hopefully get his field goal percentage up or at least around 43 to 44. But that'd be a massive leap from where it was at Duke. That's like an 8% field goal percentage jump. That's large. So especially with the extended 3-point line, that would have to be world's difference. But again, it just feels like he's a type of prospect that can make that leap given the right circumstances. So I do think though that that's kind of best case scenario for his field goal percentage. Realistically, I think you're looking around a 40 to 41% field goal percentage shooter's first few years in the league. 75 to 80% from the free throw line is pretty realistic, though, I think, for him with what he showed at Duke. 3-point, still probably around 33 to 35%, which wouldn't be too bad. Defensively, I think you can expect about 1.2 to 1.5 steals per game once he reaches his peak. Maybe around 1 steal per game, though, when he's first coming into the league. Again, that length and quick hands is still going to be something special on defense. So in terms of best landing spots, where I think he would fit best, I do cover the Bulls. I've talked a lot about them and who fits with them and whatnot. I do think that the Bulls are a very likely landing spot for him. I don't know if anyone's going to really take a flyer out on him before then. I don't think the Suns need another wing. And I just don't think he's going to go before pick number 6. The Hawks could look his way. I think that's certainly a possibility. The Kings has been a rumor. I think the Bulls is going to, like, in terms of the best landing spot earlier in the draft, though, for Reddish, it's probably going to be the Bulls. I think the Kings could happen. If we dive a little bit deeper here, though, also I think the best fit for him would be the Bulls. The Hawks might be a good number 2. I do believe they have 2 picks pretty early on there. And then I think if he does drop a little bit further than the Miami Heat would be an interesting landing spot for him if he goes in the back half of the lottery, like far in the back half. So yeah, if I had to rank him top 3, probably Bulls, Hawks, Heat. Seems good to me. And now the rating system for me, if we're going to give a discrepancy here in terms of how early of an impact he can make and then how high his ceiling. So if we're giving a 1 to 5 for his ceiling, I do believe he comes in around a 4. I do think he could. I don't know about star potential necessarily, but I do still think he can be a quality starter in the NBA. I don't think that's out of the question. Now, in terms of his ability to make an early impact, I think it's going to be like a 2. It depends on how quickly his game translates. I mean, the way he's turning around through draft workout processes, how it went so bad so quickly at Duke, and never really did turn around consistently. Could he turn it all back around and be a solid player at the next level? Definitely. I think there's a good chance that happens, but I just don't think he's going to make an impact that quickly. The teams he would land with, I don't think he would be given the opportunity to very quickly. I mean, if he lands with the Bulls, he's going to be sitting behind Otto Porter Jr. If he lands with the Hawks, I do believe he would be in more of a position to get a little bit more early playing time. The Hawks are a little bit more of an uncertain situation right now. I know they're looking at dishing out Taurean Prince. Warrior and Young form that backcourt, so that might be a good spot for him to land just in terms of playing time immediately. And then if we're looking at the Heat here, who are in kind of a messy situation right now, they do still have a good situation at the 3, though, I think, with Josh Richardson. But still, I don't think he'd really be overshadowed by anyone there per se. So I think the Bulls, in terms of immediate impact, would probably be the worst. But I also think that would be a good developmental situation to learn behind a good modern 3 like Otto Porter Jr., who's very underrated. And then getting another underrated guy, Josh Richardson, with Miami. I think that would be a good situation, too. Could he start right away at if they reshuffle that line and maybe play Josh Richardson at the 2? And then put Cam at the 3 or put him at the 4. I think that could work. And then the Atlanta Hawks too. He'd have a better chance to make an immediate impact there with a good young team that's rising up in the East, alongside Werder and Trae Young. But so I more realistically though, I'd still give him a 2. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Again, Cam Reddish, a very interesting situation here. Watching his college tape, I just don't know if that's going to do a whole lot. There's a lot to pick apart. It's gonna be interesting to see where he ends up in this draft and how he translates to the next level. But anyway, that is pretty much it on that. I'll try to come back tomorrow with someone else. I don't really want to jump into Zion yet. I've been thinking maybe doing more like a Darius Garland, Kobe White, or Jarrett Culver, someone that's got a little bit more volatile draft stock right now to try to see if we can find slotting for them. Anyway, that is pretty much it. See ya.